We're going to keep this discussion going. We want to bring in our panel, Gillian Melcher from the Wall Street Journal, editorial page writer, Ford O'Connell, Civic Forum PAC chairman, and Kevin Walling, a Democratic strategist and vice president of HG Creative. Gillian, let me start with you. The sunset clause, that's the 5-year renewal of NAFTA. What good is that to a business if I can't plan out further than 5 years? Isn't that anti-business?
Yeah, I think it's a bad idea. Businesses make these investment decisions. They certainly want certainty. They want certainty about everything from how long this trade deal is going to be in effect to how this is going to be litigated if there's a conflict. And I think what this has done is throw a lot of uncertainty into it. You know, I think we're seeing the Trump administration saying you may have something soon, but I'm skeptical of that too. I mean, there's got to be a report looking at the economic impact here. That's going to take about 100 days. Then in addition to that, unless you do skinny NAFTA, which is small changes on the edges, then you're going to need Congress to debate this. That's at least 90 days. I think this is certainly pushing it past the November elections and into next year.
All right, Ford, let me bring you into this. We heard Ed talking about the potential for wages for Mexican auto workers to rise to perhaps, in some cases, $16 an hour. That's still below. I believe that the UAW, the newer, lower starting wages for UAW workers are still higher than that. How do you get this past the UAW workers to get their approval for it?
Well, that is going to be a tough situation, but definitely the UAW believes that at least President Trump is moving in the right direction overall in terms of trying to renegotiate NAFTA and getting a better deal for the American worker. I think that this is actually a positive sign, because if you told me 9 months ago Mexico would be more willing to come to the bargaining table before Canada in terms of renegotiating NAFTA, I would say that that's a very good thing. Hopefully, Mexico and the U.S. can get it together and bring Canada into this, and then the administration can focus all of its attention on China and Iran, because I think that's going to be the big ticket item going forward.
Kevin, you're nodding your head yes. Do you think they can get a deal, at least with the Mexican government, by, and that would be the Trump administration, by, I read that August 27th is the deadline, because then it has to go to Congress for there's 90 days, and that would take us past the midterm elections if they don't do this by August 27th.
Yeah, Adam, it's a great question. You know, I agree with Gillian at the outset of this panel. 90 days is a really hard and fast deadline with the new Mexican government coming in that was elected this past July. But we've seen a lot of deadlines passed by the wayside in terms of the negotiations between the Mexican delegation and the United States. So I'm cautiously optimistic, as are the Canadians, in a recent story out this morning, that they are actually optimistic that this will happen. But there's not a lot of evidence showing that these deadlines have been met over the last couple of months as part of these negotiations.
And the other big issue has to do if you have a lawsuit, doesn't it? Let me go to you, Ford, on this. That where do you sue? That hasn't been resolved yet. I'm going to let Gillian get in on this, but Ford first. Are you aware of this? Because this is one of the big contentious issues between the Canadians and the Mexicans and the United States.
Well, no, that's exactly right, and that's why they want to keep it as a sort of trilateral agreement to determine these things versus two separate bilateral agreements. And that I think is going to be the real sticking point, along with sort of what constitutes made in America versus what constitutes made in Canada or Mexico. I think those are going to be the thorny issues, because at the end of the day, we know that we live in a very litigious society, and someone doesn't want to wind up holding the entire, weight of this situation.
Gillian, I mean, you're nodding your head yes. This issue of where you sue was a big issue.
It's
and again,
a big issue.
It seems what we're asking the United States, and I am not second-guessing the administration, but if I'm a business owner, it seems to me this is against my interests.
Yeah, I mean, the issue here is the investors want to be able to sue in their country rather than the other country. Because especially as we're seeing a rise of protectionism, you don't know that domestic politics aren't going to get out of hand. You don't know that corrupt courts are going to treat the situation fairly and not be biased against foreign investors. So that's why it's really important to have that agreement ahead of time, that it's going to be litigated in courts where the investor is from. That's something that's a guarantee for them to be willing to put forth their money. And I think when you see that eroding, people are already dealing with the uncertainty. This just piles on additional risk.
Ford, I want to bring you back. I'm just curious, can we really do a bilateral deal with Mexico and not have something on the books with Canada? Canada's our largest trading partner if you take out the EU. I mean, don't we need this to be all three countries at once?
Well, let me say this. You could do anything you want. You could conceivably have a bilateral deal with Mexico. But remember, Canada is our second largest trading partner. Mexico is our third largest trading partner. Well, actually, you're right about the large. In terms of the quantity of trade, only China surpasses both of them in terms of the two-way trade between the countries. I think by having both of them locked down moving forward, it just makes it easier dealing with China going forward, because we know darn well that China's just not going to give up. And we do agree that unity on the North American continent at the end of the day is a a very good thing.
Kevin, you get the last word. Does it make it easier to negotiate with China if we wrap up Mexico and Canada?
Oh, absolutely. It gives us certainly a stronger position. And, you know, as the Democrat on this panel, I'm excited and hopeful that negotiations have taken the place of tariff threats and fights. So negotiation is always going to put us in a stronger position on the world stage.
All three of you, I thank you for being here. Let's see if we can get this done by August 27th.